Hey, how's it going? This is Mike with expandingsound.com. I recently went to the Audio Engineering Society convention in New York City at the Javits Center, or AES for short, and I just figured I would talk about my experience and the things that I thought were the most interesting. It was a smaller year than previous years. This was about my fifth year going, and every other year was a much bigger spectacle than this year. But it does make sense. This was the first time that they've been back in New York City in the last 3 years after everything that happened with COVID. So I guess they must be having trouble getting people to buy tables, or they just planned on doing a pared down show. In any case, it was in New York. I'm from Long Island, so it's close enough to home, so I figured I'd go and check out what they had. So most of the things that interested me about this show were software. I saw a few different things that I really enjoyed. The first that I'm going to mention is the Sound Radix Auto Align 2, which is a nice way to get your signals to align with themselves, as it does some sort of measuring of the time to keep everything in phase. And I did see him use an example. It's a little tough to hear those examples when you're on a convention, a trade room floor, basically. And, there's a lot of different sounds going on every direction. But you could see what it was doing, the software itself, and it was pretty cool. I mean, it was lining everything up. So if you have phasing issues, if you're doing stereo guitars or doing some sort of stereo drums or whatever with overheads, it's nice to not have to worry about having all kinds of phasing issues and having some software do it for you if you feel like you're not well versed enough to actually be able to auto align things. The next piece of gear that I saw that really interested me would be something that would be more interesting for people who are on the live sound side of things. And that was the RCF TT515 and 808 combo. This was a subwoofer with a pole attached for a top for a front of house setup. And when I say that they were small, they were incredibly small. Their tagline that they were using for their top was that you could fit it in the palm of your hand. He didn't have a power cable with him. I wasn't able to actually hear an example of it, which is a bummer. But they were boasting that it was 2,000 watt peak and 1,000 watt RMS on the top, and the sub was 2.8. It was the smallest combination I've ever heard, and he said DJs were buying it out. It was around $5,000, I believe he said, $3,000 for the sub and $2,000 for the top, and it just looked incredible for the size and for how light it is. And if you're somebody like me who has to constantly do, setups for bands where you're walking out and basically setting up a PA, any outdoor gigs that you're doing in the summertime, come any kind of lake or beach or anything like that where people are just playing on the docks and you can't leave systems in place, the size of this is unreal, and it would be a total back saver if these things sounded good. I'm sure it's all Class D. I believe he did say it was 2 Class D amplifiers. Boasting, 1,000 watt peak on something like that when they're this small, if you could afford it, you could get a nice setup where you have 2 tops and the 2 subs. And if it puts out enough power with such a small combination, I mean, that's a beautiful thing. As somebody like me, I'm always constantly thinking about how heavy things are when I use them these days. The other thing that I wanted to bring up too was the Eventide setup. Their setup was incredible, and they had 2 pieces of software that got me really interested. One of them was called Fission, and the other one was called Split EQ. And I'm going to talk a little more about Split EQ because that's the one that I actually sat down and watched him demo for about a half hour. And it seems like a really incredible piece of software. Basically what it was doing was it was splitting tonal and transient information, and it was measuring how it was split through different settings, that were presets basically for drums or guitar or vocals or stuff like that. So the idea behind the software of splitting tonal and transient information, from what I gather, or at least watching his setup, is that it would take something that resonated for longer than, say, 5 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds, depending on the preset you pulled up, and register that as tonal information, and anything that had a quicker hit to it that didn't resonate as long would be registered as transient information. And the presenter from Eventide was able to give me some good examples of how this would be used. And the first example that he gave me was a female vocal where he was getting rid of some of the S sounds in the transient section to get rid of it and make it not as bitey, but yet still keep that high EQ on the top to get a little bit of air in the performance. After that, I received another demonstration on drums where we were getting rid of some of the sticky sounds on the cymbals, on overheads, and just the drum bus in general. So if you get that kind of stick attack where you're getting some high end that's a little piercing and you don't want that in there, he was able to just pull the transients out of that and still keep all the tonal information on the top. So it still sounded pretty good and full without getting that bitiness of the cymbal hits. In both examples there, I just talked about, removing some of the transients, but you can also go the other way too, where you can pull up transients in certain spots and remove some of the resonant tonal information to give yourself a more punchy track for whatever you decide to use that for, whether it's a guitar strum or even drums or whatever you think is the right usage for it. It seems very interesting to me. The thing that I was comparing it to most was similar to multi-band dynamics, but just more control over everything that's happening. And it seems really neat. I'm excited. I just downloaded it and I'm doing a 30-day trial, and I'm probably going to make a video about that and just kind of show how it works and use it on a couple of different examples, maybe on some S sounds, because I've always found my voice to be a little too sibilant when I sing, and it always drives me nuts. So those were just a few of the examples of things that I found really interesting at this year's show. Normal other years, I've definitely had a little bit of a better time and saw a lot more things, but I just don't think that there's as many things to showcase this year. Arturia announced a Mini Freak basically the exact same day of the show, so I was really hoping I'd see one of those there, to no avail. Did get some free magazines, talked to somebody from the recording studio insurance program, which I found pretty cool. A nice thing to consider, if you have a lot of gear, which a lot of people who watch this channel or any channel that's interested in this kind of stuff does, it's probably smart to look into insurance for your gear. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this and found the split EQ interesting. And if you're interested in getting, a front of house setup, that RCF looks really cool if you don't have a lot of space. And the auto align seems like a very useful tool. Hopefully next year it's a little bit bigger again. I might possibly go to NAMM in April if I can get my way out there. I've definitely gone a few other years and just, made a couple of quick videos of me walking around the floor and trying some stuff out, and whatever I was allowed to plug into, I would try and plug into really quick and just demo it fast. It's never the perfect example of anything. It's always just a quick overview, but sometimes, you can get an idea of what something's about from a quick look. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, give it a like and possibly subscribe. I'm terrible at asking for any of these things because I just feel dumb. I'm not great at self-promotion. I just like to talk about music and play music, and that's really it. But if you enjoyed it, I appreciate any support I can get, and thank you for watching.